Hello and welcome back. Now, reality is a weird thing. We know that. But I want to challenge you with something. I want you to think of an experience brand new to you that you do not have the words to describe. Now, when I say no words, I mean there's no descriptors at all. No color, no shape, no sensation. Something that is so completely foreign to you that you cannot describe it. And you couldn't do it, could you? See, that's the interesting thing about reality, or one of the interesting things about reality, I should say, in that language is the basic building block of human reality. It's the way our brains work. It's the way our awareness works. You can make the argument that it's what our consciousness is based off of, although there's a lot to say about that. Language consisting of different seed sounds that we attach meaning to is how we approach reality, how we form it, how we come to interact with it. And as we all know, that process of attaching meaning to something for outcome and to effect is the heart of magic. Now, today's guest is Bob Smith, and I really enjoyed talking with Bob on this one, and I have a feeling that you're really going to enjoy it as well. It's fascinating, his approach to letter magic. Now, the way that Bob breaks everything down, you can see his scientific training. As an engineer, he has a step-by-step process that he can walk you through. I definitely recommend at the end of the video you check out the websites that he lists where he can be reached at, because he definitely has a lot to offer. So I want you to grab a snack, grab a drink, sit back, relax, and I hope you have as good a time listening to Bob as I did. All right, and 3, 2, 1. Hello, Bob. Welcome to the
Welcome,
show.
welcome all. Happy to be here. Little delayed today because I was doing early morning ritual work and very conveniently fell asleep. So for that, I apologize. But hey, we're only human.
You know, it's funny. There's so many things that non-practitioners don't know, and falling asleep in ritual and realizing mid-ritual that you forgot to go to the restroom beforehand. Those two have been the bane of existence of so many practitioners.
Yeah, yeah. It's more than one lad or lass has left a puddle in the middle of their sacred circles. They
Yeah,
didn't
it
let
happens.
something break containment. Yeah.
Wonderful start to today's show. I love
Mm.
it. All right. So, Bob, we have not met before just now, but I have definitely followed your work a little bit, and you have a really amazing approach to your magical practice. And without me feeding anything into that or setting it up for you, can you tell me what magic is to you, how you use it, how you approach it?
Sure. Magic is really just engineering. It's
Mhm.
the underlying forces in the universe. Unfortunately, given the limitations of modern science and having a degree in engineering myself, I can speak to this at least a little bit. There's an awful lot of stuff that goes on that we don't have a good ability to measure, or
Mhm.
that we require secondary things to measure.
Okay.
So the problem with that is it makes doing the engineering of doing A to get B really
Mhm.
hard to figure out. When it comes to magic, mankind figured out how to do a lot of this stuff a really long time ago. You know, one of the things I tell my students all the time, I invented nothing. Everything you
Mhm.
see here, everything you learn from me, someone else has done. Now, I may have organized and packaged it in a way that makes it easier to grasp, because let's be honest, a lot of magic takes a long time to learn because the pedagogy sucks. People don't know
Yes.
how to teach. They don't understand how things fit together. And I mean, I'm sure, like you, myself, with a lot of my more traditional teachers, it was really they would show me a technique, tell me to go practice, and explain nothing.
Hmm.
And so, how you were supposed to fit all that together into a coherent system,
Yep.
okay,
Yep.
but ultimately, it's just engineering, engineering utilizing technology that is poorly understood.
I like that. That integrates really well with a lot of the stuff that I've been encountering these days, especially as we start looking more and more into the more out there physics.
Mhm.
It's kind of funny. You're in engineering, so you have the engineering approach, and my master's is in counseling and psychology. So we kind of have that. Let's look at this scientifically, but from physical versus, psychological
Sure.
coherence. But it's a lot of the same thing from this side of things too. How do you apply your engineering skills into your magic?
Well, first of all, everything I do builds.
Hmm.
So if you say want to learn a system, okay, we have different levels of reality. We got physical reality, we got this energetic thing some people call the astral, we got this mental
Hmm.
thing, we've got this void based thing, and then we've got this complete reality or non dual light stage.
Hmm.
The techniques for interacting with each level of reality are distinctly different, but they also stack. So if you're moving from
Hmm.
one pole to the other, you basically end up with about 60 discrete skills you have to learn to engage with reality completely. So the
Okay.
path of enlightenment is nothing more than taking all these disparate pieces of reality and smacking them back together, and you get complete reality. And manifestation is nothing more than taking that complete reality and breaking it down into discrete pieces until
Hmm.
you get what you're looking for. And it works cleanly in both directions. So that says to me either we're really hallucinating badly or this is actually how things work. Um, and again, I've never had a student who did the work who wasn't able to get the same results that everybody else
Hmm.
got. Now, it might
Okay.
happen faster or it might happen slower, depending upon the person and a whole bunch of other factors. But again, what I found just through trial and error, and like many people studying all these different systems, I started saying, "Oh, wait, this is the same thing here, and this is
Hmm.
the same thing over here." Okay. And it was finally when I started studying Franz Barden's system under a man named Mark
Okay.
Rasmus. I had already had the experience of things like the void and non-dual light and the elements and all this other kind of stuff,
Hmm.
but it wasn't organized well, and I came from multiple systems. Barden's system, from a live teacher who could actually walk you through it,
Hmm.
allowed me to structure everything. It's like, oh, okay, this is what does. This is what this does.
Hmm.
And it became very clearly apparent, all right, this is just how it works. So, if you want to do something like engage your clairsentience, subtle sense of touch, the better schools all tend to have an exercise akin to what we call building the ball, where you
Hmm.
breathe energy in through the body, push it out through the hands until you
Yep.
feel a ball. And there are a series of discrete steps to do that. The rest of magic works the same way. With the only real X factor being most of the better teachers out there, not all of them, but about 90% of them, the more famous personalities anyway, have very good natural clairvoyance and clairaudience.
Hmm.
Now, whether this is due to drug use, now, by the way, the Europeans use a lot of alchemy to generate theirs,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
um, getting bonked in the head, as a kid,
Yeah. Can
or
confirm. Yeah.
or some other phenomenon. For the rest of us, generating those skills so you can see and talk to the spirit world directly
Hmm.
usually takes a minute. It can be done, and I've seen
Yeah.
students do it, and I've known other people who have as well. And as I've talked about a lot in my videos, my open eye clairvoyance is pretty trashy. My closed eye clairvoyance is meh K,
Yeah.
but I make up for it with my other senses. Okay. Um, that said, at this point, I think I've pretty much figured out how to get everybody to the meh K level of clairvoyance in about 100 to 150 hours of really intense practice.
Yep.
if they're willing to do the practice, which is the other problem in that most practitioners, as you
Yeah.
know, tend to do the stuff that's enjoyable, which is the
Hmm.
stuff they tend to be better at because they don't want to be pros. They don't want to be on
Yeah.
the court shooting free throws for 4 hours at a time for 2
Hmm.
years until they don't suck at it anymore.
Yeah.
So they just suck at it. Is that fair or was that too much of a ramble?
No, that is you were on the nose in a lot of things. And you might be, I don't know if you're using your clairsentience or not, but that was one of my introductions, the bonk on the head.
Yeah.
When I was a little one, I could see auras, spirits, all sorts of stuff real easy. But unfortunately, my dad was a conservative preacher, and that got literally beat out of me. But I had a major concussion at 15 and was dead for a few minutes. And that
Yep.
seemed to resolve some issues. So things got kind
Fair
of
enough.
wild after that. But you're absolutely right. So many practitioners, myself included, we love to do the stuff that feels good. The tumo practice, the bliss, the tantrika stuff that just feels awesome. But do we want to sit and rotate a shape in our head for an hour if we can? 5 minutes to an hour? No. Frustrating.
Yeah.
But it is fascinating to meet people who teach magic from the scientific background, which I think is pretty awesome. We're going to hear a storm kicking up here pretty conveniently as we
Nice.
start talking. This seems to happen with me a fair bit, which is fun. But speaking of interesting forms of magic, now you practice, correct me if I'm wrong, letter magic.
Correct.
All right, can you walk me
Um,
through this?
sure. So the most popular book on the topic, and until very recently, the only book on the topic in English, is Barden's third book, The Key to the True Kabbalah. I'm gonna
Mm,
grab that right quick, illustrate it
sure.
first. So what this does is it represents this sacred
Mm-hmm.
geometry or mandala. Okay. In the center, you got the elements, then you got the planets, then you got the zodiac, then you have the Sephiro. So
Mm-hmm.
physical, astral, mental, akasha. Don't know. Okay.
Mm,
So I learned this initially from Mark Rasmus, the first opening parts, the letter work and some of the planetary work. And what I came to find out was pretty interesting. So the letters represent elemental phenomena. So A
mm-hmm.
for the letter air, M for water, SCH for fire, uh, umlaut A for earth.
Mm,
These are baseline forces of how the universe is constructed. Everything has this. And learning this, what I quickly figured out was like, oh, these spirits I'm dealing with, they're just riding shotgun on one of these things and they're putting their flavor onto it, via the egregore effect that some people out here are familiar with.
yeah.
I'm like, okay, so like the medicine Buddha. Okay. Everybody knows that green color in the background on his
Mm-hmm.
mandala, right? On his tanka.
Yeah.
That's the letter L.
Hmm. Okay.
So by learning letter magic, you can repeat and create any city, any effect you want. And it's internally generated. Now, this goes back a really long time through a lot of extensive research in North Africa and in Anatolia, Eastern Turkey, and all this other kind of place. It quickly became apparent that letter magic was a known quantity up until early antiquity.
Mm,
At some point in that period, age of Aries, under the early Romans, it disappeared.
mm,
Don't know why. I have some pet rock
mm.
theories, and we can get into those if you really want to kill some time. But the
Oh,
reality
totally.
is, people forgot about it.
Yeah.
Okay. What Barden did is that mandala you've seen is very common in certain Ashkenazi or Kabbalah groups out of
Mm-hmm.
Orthodox Judaism. But there's a catch. See, the first practitioners of letter magic that had an alphabet that we know of were the Phoenicians.
Mm,
In the Phoenician alphabet, if you use that to generate this, is really dirty. The Phoenicians dealt with a lot of blood magic, and I can give some
Yep.
examples of that. So nobody messes around with that for very long. Well, it turns out modern spoken Hebrew is actually Phoenician. You can substitute Phoenician characters for Hebrew characters one for one, and it translates perfectly. So really, you're now left with this concept that maybe the early Israelites were just part of the Phoenician world, but they were the part of the Phoenician world that didn't murder their children.
The less child killing part of the Phoenician world. Yeah.
Right. So when you work with the Hebrew letters in Kabbalah, okay, and you use it this way, it cleans it up a lot. It's very akin to Buddhism's relationship to Hinduism.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still that whisper of Hinduism when you do Buddhism. Just as with this, if you do letter magic using Hebrew characters, you still get that whisper of the Phoenician world. Keeping in mind, for example, the Psalms are Phoenician. That's their origin.
Yeah. Yeah, I have noticed the rhythm in the way psalms are traditionally done. That does not sound, I mean, obviously not English, but when you go past, Yiddish and ancient Judaic, it doesn't really match up until you dig deeper. I hadn't thought about looking at the Phoenician connection yet, though.
Right. So what Barden did is he took that mandala and he stripped all that out. So when you do letter magic this way, and people get confused about this because they think it has something to do with the letters. The letters in the alphabet are just a labeling system, but they have a heavy egregoric component. So you can find something very similar to this in the Hindu yogic systems with Tattva Shuddhi. They're very complex systems of that are basically the same. So what you do is you harness these elemental forces and you learn how to stack them and you learn how to differentiate them, and you can generate any magical effect you want. The catch is you're having to generate it.
Yeah.
There's no egregore, there's no magic pool of energy floating around out there that's going to do the work for you. So that's the downside. And it works through a combination of sound, color, and sensation. And I'm even willing to wager these days that this stuff is so old, because my students and friends who are good at time dilation magic are like, yeah, I just hit the black ice at the end of it. We don't know. It's so old, it predates anything we could even look back at. And I'll get to a historical example of that in a minute. So you can see very possibly a not quite human, not quite animal thing lying on its back after a long day of chasing around other not quite human, not quite animal things. Looking up into the sky, it sees this sky blue color because it's a blue sky. Its mind suddenly expands. It hears the sound of an eagle's cry in its right ear. That's the letter A for air element. And how the sand creature goes down to the lake to take a piss at 3 a.m. and is being wary and looking around to make sure something doesn't eat it.
Yeah.
And it's staring at the water, and all of a sudden it gets cold. It hears this sound.
Yeah.
That's ML. That's the letter M. That's water element. And how this could even be the genesis of human speech, because this not quite human, not quite animal thing was trying to repeat or recreate these forces on its own. That's how old letter magic is. And basically what I found, again, just through experimentation, is that when you call in a spirit or a deity or whatever to help you manifest an effect, it's just flipping switches in the body to do these things. So when you learn letter magic, your relationship with entities changes radically. There's no longer the dependency angle. Unless it's demonic, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
They come in, they'll tell you how to do it. And again, the idea of the letters, it's just a labeling system. They'll give you a letter combination and then you'll go practice. That's what makes the system so useful and so potent. The downside is it is a pure internal power system. There's no huge battery bank of an egregore floating around or ancient rituals floating around out there that you can draw on. It doesn't work that way. So you don't get the immediacy of stuff that you get from, say, doing, a Golden Dawn ritual where, hey,
Hmm.
lesser invoking pentagram of fire, bang, right? Doesn't work that way. But as I like to say, ritual magic takes a wind up and a pitch. With this stuff, with letter magic, you can just throw because there aren't all these
Interesting.
fancy steps involved that you have to wind up to. And you're not having to ask anyone's permission, which could be good or bad.
That's kind of nice. Yeah.
Now, the downside is, and this is the mistake that I've seen with most of the guys who learn this stuff on their own, because after I wrote my book on the topic a few years ago, I got contacted by about a dozen people, and I still do about once or twice a year, who learn the material on their own.
Mm.
Comes in two forms. One, counterbalancing. So if you work with a lot of fire, you have to work with a lot of water to sink it,
Mm.
or it's going to create problems. Most people don't understand that, and they end up creating issues for themselves. Two, if you don't have sufficient body training done, you can't transmute the energy into the astral
Mm.
or the etheric very well. So it ends up bottlenecking at that void and mental level. Now, listen, if you're an alchemist, who's making different fluids and different oils and all this other kind of business, you don't need much beyond the mental level because you can, sit there and just project it into what you're working on for hours at a time.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you want to punch somebody in the head really hard or run really fast, the body has to be able to support that.
Mm.
So this is not a quick form of training. Hey, you do 2 hours a day for 18 months, you can get pretty far. But it doesn't have anybody telling you what to do either. And so it's hard to work.
Mm.
But ultimately, you can do this utilizing the ball above head method, and it proves its veracity pretty quickly. And it's very
Okay.
utilitarian, and there's no liturgical, ethnic, religious, anything hooked up to it at all. It's just bare bones manipulating reality in a very gross form. And if you're willing to hammer down, I don't know if you'd be able to regrow a limb. That might be a bridge too far, but anything short of that,
Mm.
yeah, you can pretty much do.
Awesome. When I'm working with somebody who's absolutely new to magic,
Mhm,
sigil magic is usually one of the first concepts that I toss out there, and
mhm,
not necessarily from like the Austin Osman Spare or Grant Morrison approach,
sure.
so much as the phonetic sigils.
Mhm,
I love what you said about it being the basis of human thought, because consciousness itself is dependent on I shouldn't say consciousness, but awareness itself is
mhm,
largely dependent on our ability to have a word or sound for something.
mhm,
And like that old trope in Tolkienian style fantasy, to have a name, or Earthsea, to have a name of something is to have power over that thing. So that's really amazing. I love the fact that you've codified that. I shouldn't say codified, but you've laid it out a lot more gracefully than my clumsy younger self has done.
fair enough.
Um, how did you get into magic? What's your superhero origin story, if you don't mind my asking?
Yeah, I went through Kundalini awakening at the age of 13 in
Whew.
South Texas. I was from a largely agnostic family,
Hmm.
so I didn't know what the hell was going on. I had no clue as to what was happening. It
Mhm.
took me about 15 years to figure out what was happening. By which point in time, I eat normal food, couldn't eat food at
Mm.
all without it coming out of my body burning. It was that bad. And because
Oof.
I had no training and no understanding in religion or esoterica to even frame
Hmm.
what the hell was happening. Now, I'd met people who were mentally ill, and I knew I wasn't one of those.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I was smart enough to keep my mouth shut so I didn't get locked up anywhere. So finally, I was stationed in Arizona. I broke down and went to an acupuncturist because I didn't know what else to do. And I remember laying down on the table, because those little rooms they have, right? You know, laying down
Hmm.
on the table, and she came in and put the needles into me and left. And I passed out. And when I woke up, the needles were spinning. There was so much heat
Hmm.
and energy coming out of my body because I didn't know the circulations. I didn't know any of that stuff, right? I didn't know what the hell was going on. And just in time to watch her walk back into the room and get staggered because the room was 10 degrees hotter than it
Hmm.
was when she left. And so as long as I went in every couple of weeks, things were okay. And then finally, after a few months of this, she was like, "Hey, listen, I like you. You're a good patient. You're very compliant. You do what I tell you to do, but I'm not making you better."
Hmm.
She goes, "I got a friend, little out there. They might be able to help you." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, whatever." And so I met this individual who was my first energetic teacher, Taoist teacher, and who was
Hmm.
that person had scary level near physical power, and learned a lot. And then I read the books by Glenn Morris, Path Notes of an American Ninja Master.
That
Uh,
was my
le-
start too.
right, learned to run the orbits on my own. Resolved the Kundalini thing in about a year.
Hmm.
Um, and then I was kind of off to the races in terms of magical practice, largely Asian in derivation, almost
Hmm.
exclusively Asian in derivation, until about 2014, where I had a chance meeting with Mark Rasmus in the Mid Atlantic, and then pretty much doing Barden's system with the addition of body work from, you know, my canon, and a lot of breath work from the stuff that I learned as well, because as you know, those elements are largely, or in some cases exclusively, missing from his work.
Yeah.
Uh, then starting around 2021, I really started working with the four letter combinations in Barden's third book. Began an exploration with a private practice group of the outer planets. And that's when Barden's system opened up. So here's a
Hmm.
strange thing. The only place anywhere in all of Barden's works that he explains the entire meta system is on page 18 of the third book, Key to True Kabbalah,
Hmm.
entitled The Symbolism of the Third Tarot Card, in which he reads out how all of this relates and why you should do it. Only place in any of his works that's explained.
Hmm.
7 out of 10 people I can read that page to, they'll nod, their eyes will glaze over, and they'll forget all about it 15 minutes later. I myself had
Yeah.
probably read the book 50 or 60 times until it really sunk in.
Hmm.
And even then, it was only after we'd finished the Outer Planets Terry series and gotten most of the way through the Zodiacal series that I went back and read that page again. And it was like, oh, of course, it's always been here. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at doing what I'm doing right now. We've worked all our
Hmm.
way up to Kether or non-dual light on the upward path. We're about 2/3 the way down the Zodiacal series now, and I'll probably be finished with the whole thing in another 2 years, 2.5 years. And then it usually takes me another year or so after I finish something to really get my mind around it and understand how all that kind of fits together. So,
Gotcha. It's quite the adventure. That's awesome. Also, fun fact, you are the only occultist I've ever met who also cites Glenn Morris's work. Started with him. He actually was I reached out to him. He's actually the reason I ended up joining the Bujinkan Budo Taijutsu school,
hmm,
which largely defined a good portion of my life.
cool.
But It's kind of cool. So the that is an amazing adventure that you've been on. What is, do you think, coming up next for you? I
Um,
know that's a big ask.
yeah, no, it's like, listen, Barnes Mandel is probably 90% of my effort at this point, right?
Okay.
That said, what I have been doing is I've been getting to know people who are more operational magicians
Hmm.
and learning more about things like conjure, getting more involved
Hmm.
with grimoire work. Again, Barden's got a great grimoire, his second book, Practice Magical Evocation, but there's some
Yeah.
stuff missing in there. Now I've been working with Pentacles a bit lately, and you've probably seen some of that on my Instagram feed.
Hmm.
Again, Psalms, that kind of thing. It's the nuts and bolts stuff for very practical magic. That's that isn't internally derived, by the way. That's really what I've been working on in my own personal practice lately. I don't know if I'm ever going to teach any of that stuff because, quite honestly, there are people out there who are just much better at that than I am.
Yeah.
But letter magic is pretty much going to be my focus in terms of my magical exploits, unless something happens or I die.
Yeah. I mean,
Simply because so few people do it, and it's such a
yeah.
potent tool for enlightenment or manifestation. Choose one.
Hmm.
Um, and it allows you to hijack other systems very quickly because you can go in, you can see what a practitioner is doing, and go,
Hmm.
that's what it is.
And then just nab it.
Nab it.
Very cool. I will definitely. It's fun. I love doing these interviews here, not just to put them online, but also because I these little tidbits come through, and I'm honest about it. I do pirate a few little ideas to integrate in my own practice, like we all do. Uh,
Everybody's stealing a step, brother. None of it's new.
oh, absolutely.
None of it's new. Not even a little bit.
Yeah, it's what I like to tell people on the hypnosis convention circuit is we're all thieves.
Yeah.
We hear something good, we grab it, we use it, and then we move on. So going and using letter magic and your approach to it,
Mhm.
what are the things that you normally use it for? Do you focus on healing, on clairsentience, on other services? What do you
Anything
normally
you
apply this
could,
with?
literally any human endeavor you can engage in, you can use letter magic for. You want to improve your
Okay.
distance, endurance running, letter A. You want to improve, sorry, letter Z. You want to improve your sprinting speed, letter D.
Hmm.
You want to attract more customers to you, letter G.
Okay. Let me
You want to
write down letter
increase your
G here real quick.
IQ to everybody does. Don't feel bad about it. It's
Yeah.
steroids. You want to increase your IQ, operant IQ, so you can learn more. Letter A. You want to increase
Hmm.
your magical ability. Sorry, your artistic abilities. Letter Z. It
Hmm.
just goes on and on and on. Now, figuring out how to apply it in some cases can be a little curious. But I've got students who are ballers at IPOs, who are
Hmm.
engineers, who are doctors, who are every flavor of human being under the sun that you can find. Um, and they apply these things to the stuff that they do for a living
Okay.
universally. It's that flexible a tool, and it's that potent once you really know how to transmit. Um, the amount of time that takes and the work you got to do physically or otherwise in order to get there
Hmm.
can be a bit variable. Most of all my successful students are complete units of human beings. The one thing that I've seen that is very noticeable with letter magicians is these are people who have experienced significant trauma in life, but recovered from it before they got to my doorstep.
Hmm.
So all these people have an iron will and a tenacity that's both endearing and a little frightening. Every time I hear an origin story from them and I think it can't get any worse, I get a new student and no,
Hmm.
the basement's been lowered. But
Yep.
if you can overcome something like that, if it doesn't break you, as you know, in many cases, that makes you. And
Hmm.
that, again, excuse me, that's the problem with letter magic, and that you're doing the work.
Yeah.
There's nothing there to encourage you. Nothing's going, hey, go team. No, it's just you grinding this out for hours at a time sometimes until you finally get it.
Yeah.
And that takes a very specific personality type and mentality.
Hmm.
We refer, when I host Magic Camp and folks come out and study with me personally, a lot of the techniques we refer to as the Autism Olympics because it's just, oh, you're acting like a crazy person over and over and over again.
Oh yeah.
Um, and again, it takes a very specific individual to do that.
Hmm.
And for that matter, honestly, ritual work is just easier.
Yeah.
You know, it's paint by color. You follow the steps, the thing happens.
It's plug and play. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. With letter magic, you can do all of that, although the individual workload may, in fact, be higher depending upon how you approach it.
Mm.
But yeah, that's pretty. And literally, anything you could want to do in the world, you can use letter magic for
All
easily.
right. Very cool. The one of the things that I really love because coming from studying Glenn Morris
Mhm.
and self-studying for the first few years and doing his approach to Neikong or Qigong
Yeah,
was learning the very hard way, pretty much exactly what you're saying. If your body is not prepared for that energy or that effort, you're going to have a bad time.
yeah.
But you're going to learn a valuable lesson and get evidence of the existence of your magic. I do
Hopefully, not
remember,
be evidence.
yeah, preferably not. Yeah. The number of teachers in just the martial arts who I can't name, but who would do that spooky, energetic stuff like a punch in the ribs that you don't feel in the ribs, but you feel in the organs underneath them.
Sure.
Really kooky stuff that kind of pops up there. It's fascinating. Now, when you learn how to apply this, is there a particular pattern that needs to be followed, or is there like an intuitive approach to this?
No, I mean, if you've done the body work, you tend to
Mhm.
have the ability to transmit.
Okay.
And, in my system in particular, we spend a lot of time teaching you how to differentiate between the different levels of reality
Hmm.
because letter L, for example, one of my favorite ones. Okay. At a high level, it represents morality. At an astral level, it represents astral equilibrium or
Hmm.
magical equilibrium. At the vital level, which is what people care about, it represents vitality and health.
Okay.
So the effect you get is hyper specific to where you punch the balloon, right?
Gotcha.
Now, most systems aren't that specific. So five element fish in each one, right?
Mm.
Yeah. Fire, fire, wood, water, and metal. Okay. Yeah, they're following that punching pattern. They're generating the sound. They're using the intuition. Those guys have a shit ton of elemental energy. They
Mm.
just use it to smack each other in the head. And if they're really good, they might add it to their acupuncture.
Yeah.
Um, that's very inefficient
Mm.
in terms of figuring out what to do with these things. And by the way, they're dealing with the same energies my guys deal with. We just have
Hmm.
27 letters and they've got five.
Yeah.
Okay. You know,
Okay.
so
Interesting. Yeah, I'm seeing the parallels and the differences as you're laying it out are kind of starting to resonate a bit more with some previous experiences
yeah.
too.
So like with the runes too, I'm sure you can find some examples and parallels there as well. It's
Oh
just
yeah.
if you're dealing with character based stuff, you really have to use the ball above head method to kind of fine tune what you're dealing with.
Hmm.
But because you're using characters, the egregoric flavoring is particularly strong.
Yeah.
Now, you also get to pull on pools of power, which are nice,
Yeah.
you know, but those can have some effects too, because as you know, when you borrow someone else's juice, they get an opinion in what you say and do.
Hmm. Yep.
So there you go. But yeah, did I answer the question or was I just kind of off tangent at that point?
No, you definitely did. You have this amazing ability to answer the question and then give a lot more like clarity and insight into it, which is awesome. It's always what I look for. as a magician and a therapist, actually.
Sure.
And actually, that's a good segue to where I wanted to go. Now, part of the reason that I am actually getting that licensing and all that jazz is because there's no real mental health assistance for people who routinely see things that are there but no one else can see. Right?
Correct.
What are the mental health effects of using this? And realizing fully you're
Mhm.
not a mental health expert, and we have to
Sure.
say the legal thing. You're a
Yeah.
engineer,
No.
but what do you see from that point of view?
Well, full disclaimer, I gave up my medical license 3 years ago. So
Oh,
again,
okay.
not in traditional Chinese medicine. So I
Oh,
have to
okay.
speak for that and got the degree and all that. Don't practice anymore. So yeah, full disclaimer there too. Skill in use is the term that you want to keep in mind.
Okay.
If you just load up on energy and you don't bother to sync it and you don't bother to counterbalance it and you're
Mm,
overweight so the energy gets trapped around the organs, yeah, you're going to go batshit crazy. It's going to make you nutty as hell.
yeah.
If you haven't done the body work, it's going to bottleneck at the mental and astral levels, and you're going to get crazy visions and blah, 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 blah. None of which are true. Right?
Yeah.
And I can give some hilarious examples of that later on.
Oh, definitely.
However, if you understand counterbalancing and the concept of equilibrium in letter magic, where you balance these things,
Hmm.
right? Really healthy. I've seen most of my students who kept up the practice lose the vast majority of their vices and bad habits within about 3 to 5 years,
Hmm.
completely passively. They just stopped doing dumb stuff. Um, my favorite one was a student who had a prostitution problem. He lived in
Ooh.
Asia, and he was banging like five five hookers a day. Now, leaving aside the monetary cost of doing this, you know,
Yeah.
after a few years of practice, he was in another country where prostitution was very comfortable, very common,
Hmm.
and he went for a run in the morning, went for a jog. Just running by a brothel made him physically ill,
Hmm.
and he couldn't even remember the last time he'd been in one. So
Interesting.
that's an interesting thing. Generally, I don't want to say people become more tranquil, but they become much more focused in their thoughts. They become
Hmm.
much less reactive because those elemental imbalances in the body that we all have, by the way, even I do, okay,
Yeah.
they do this. So instead of being this kind of thing, it's, yeah, maybe this kind of thing. And that solves a lot of those problems. On the other end, if you're devoted enough to your practice, you tend to start losing all of your bad habits. Why? The bad habits are a distraction of what you're trying to get done.
Hmm.
So the example I use is a very old one where, the Taoist master comes out of the mountains once or twice a year, rolls into the tea house, which is a combination brothel inn,
Hmm.
proceeds to wreak havoc for a week and a half, and then goes home and goes back to practice.
Yeah.
That's kind of what ends up happening. People just get rid of their bad habits because it's a distraction of what they're trying to get done. It also tends to improve their relationship with their family members a lot as well, but not from a perspective that's going to be popular.
Yeah.
They start treating people better, not because they necessarily care, but because the static generated by not treating them well is bigger trouble. Now, if you're the person on the receiving
Yeah.
end of that, you don't care. You just realize your dad's not acting like a jerk all the time.
Yeah.
And this is where conversations with some of the entities regarding this are very interesting.
Hmm.
Entities, sometimes you can tell they were human at one point, other times, probably not. But the ones that are tend to be old, like
Hmm.
really, really, really old. And there are a lot of things in popular consciousness that are just fads. They're not permanent. So if you talk to some of these entities about things like mental domination magic,
Hmm.
like, well, as long as you take care of the other person, it's okay.
Which is not what most people wanting to learn mental domination have in store for anyone. Yeah.
Right, but it also expresses a much older view of human interactions. So, like
Mm.
John Michael Greer, for example, right,
Yeah.
wrote the book Circles of Power. What this was a reference to was the pagan world, where if you were at the center of the circle, you could do whatever the hell you wanted to anybody else in the circle.
Yeah.
That's not a modern egalitarian kind of concept. The flip side of that, though, is you had a responsibility to everybody who was in that circle as well.
Yeah.
Now, as you said, this isn't often, you know, uh, expressed very well. So, as a functional standard, maybe not politically, but certainly in their private lives, 90+% of my students are hyper conservative in terms of their behavior
Hmm.
because they're running businesses, they're serious professionals. They don't have time for the static that comes from bullshit behavior or bad habits. And again,
Yeah.
they've got an iron will because they all survived something insane before they showed up on my doorstep.
Hmm.
So they've already confronted those kinds of issues through another medium. But yeah, generally speaking, I've seen at the 3 to 5 year point, the vast majority of their bad habits are just gone. And
Excellent.
their treatment of other people has mitigated really, really well. I mean, I knew one student who was quite racist at one point,
Oof.
and at the end of it, he wasn't, just because he didn't need the mental static
Mm.
of dwelling on these thoughts. Now, again,
Interesting.
that's not an enlightened viewpoint of changing your behavior, but if you're
Yeah.
on the receiving end, you don't care.
Yeah. It's this person is no longer, being an absolute bag of stuff
Yeah.
for such a trivial reason at all.
Right.
That is very interesting. Working therapeutically and with hypnosis
Sure.
largely, I see a very similar thing. There is something in the human system when you get connected to that deeper element within yourself.
Mm.
Element. That's a pun I didn't mean to make. Within yourself, that kind of stuff just vanishes, and you're
Yeah.
not even really sure why, which I think is a really interesting and beautiful thing. So, let's put some people in touch with where they can actually run into your work. Do you have
Sure.
any books, any courses, anything you want to recommend to reach out to you with?
There are three good places.
Okay.
If you want to read the blog, which I do some interesting fiction on there every once in a while, there's 60skills.com, spelled out exactly the way you think it would.
Okay.
SIXTY, skills, SKILLS.com. There's Perseus Arcane Academy, which hosts all my materials,
Hmm.
by the way, and a bunch of other fabulous practitioners in the Hermetic arts.
Okay.
And if you want to see my smiling face in person, uh, you can go to Magiccamp.click, and that will have
Okay.
all the dates of events that are coming up as well. And we do both abroad. We still got space in Spain. We got a little bit of space for the Maryland event, which is actually in Harper's Ferry. So, don't jump all over me, guys. This is where I
Okay.
found the Airbnb that would take everybody. And
Maryland's just a little bit north of me. I'll see if I can swing something in that
yeah, we
direction.
can talk offline, man. Yeah, we can
Yeah.
talk offline for sure. Uh, see, Asia is open. So if you want to come out to Chiang Mai and enjoy the lovely northern Thai experience, we got a great training facility there as well. And
Okay.
then we're probably going to do another one in Portugal in late summer. And then maybe a
Okay.
second stateside event, but I wouldn't count on it. So that's kind of what I got planned right now. They're 5 day immersive events. So people come in. If we can, you live on site. That way people can kind of hang out afterwards and just do whatever. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way.
Hmm.
And in Thailand, we'll be using a training hall. And then that's it for that. Those are the three places. Oh, and of course, there's thelivingcrystal.com if you
Okay.
want to see a recreation of some really interesting ancient technology that generates energy on its own that you can then reharness to do other things.
Oh, okay.
And I can tell you an interesting meth house story, but it's where someone was using some of our devices to make super meth, and we Found out about it when they sent one in for repair, and I had to
Huh.
cut those guys off. So,
Uh, yeah, as you do. A magical super meth it's not a thought I thought I would encounter when I got out of
not on
bed
the
this
bingo
morning.
card. Not on the bingo
Yeah.
card.
Wake up, stretch, drink your coffee, magical super meth. All right. Well, this has been really awesome, actually,
Cool.
talking about this and learning. I always love learning new things. And I think that ultimately, no matter what magic someone practices, that's kind of the goal is learn, grow, and let whatever that is within us get stronger and better every day. So I'm going to go ahead and close out this recording. I'm going to put everything together and get it out within the week. I do want to say thanks for coming on in and making sure that people know how to reach wisdom when they need to reach it, because we need more of that in this world right now.
Sure, man.
And we'll go ahead and say you have a great one.
Keep on keeping on, man.
Well, that was a lot of fun. Bob's conversation and mine seem to have kicked off a local storm. You might hear that in the background right now. Always kind of one of those fun little quirks that happens when we start talking about magic and how reality can change. Now, you probably noticed already, at least I hope you noticed, that I'm back. This YouTube channel is once again relaunching after several adventures and far too long a hiatus. This show is back and ready to continue to bring occult learnings, wisdom, and power right to the hands of those who can use it. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, you know that the world right now in 2026 is absolute bonkers. And that's part of the reason I've come back, is to put power, to put wisdom, to put clarity in the hands of people who need to navigate this ever-changing world with more authority, with more autonomy, and with more ability to set their lives the way that they want to have them set. So I want to encourage you to look into the people that I interview with. I want to encourage you to check out their websites. Check out my website, liberationhypnosis.com, where you're going to find classes. You're going to find techniques. You're going to find spells. You're going to find things that you can use or that you can learn to help keep you and your loved ones safe, to help keep you and your loved ones moving forward in this world. Because in the end, that's really what this is all about. Because at its beating heart, magic is all about doing more, learning more, being more capable of setting your life in the direction that you want to. It's about autonomy. It's about recovering that part of you that the world wants to tell you doesn't exist and can't possibly be real, because it's very convenient for the people who are currently calling the shots for you to think that you have no power in your life. So do check out the people that I interview. Do check out my work. And remember, no matter what path you choose, never let them dull your shine. Never let them take it away from you. Always remember that it is your life and you get to live it the way that you want to, as long as you're willing to put that work in.